The shuttle smelled of ash and ozone, the sharp tongue cutting through the sterile recycled air. It was a small, armored diplomatic vessel, scarred from its hasty landing on the burning surface of New Daegu. Through the small viewport, Jay watched the column of black smoke rising from what had been the colony's primary hydroponics spire. It painted a dark smudge against the orange sky. He didn't move. His hands rested on his knees, perfectly still. Beside him, Myray worked, her fingers deft and sure as she applied a final sealant bandage to a gash on the pilot's forearm. The pilot, a young man named Bin, winced but didn't make a sound. His eyes were fixed on the burning world they were leaving behind. "It's clean," Myray said, her voice low and steady. "Just keep it dry." She packed her medical kit, the clicks of the latches loud in the quiet cabin. She was a trauma surgeon, but her field uniform was stained with soot and something darker. She had spent the last 48 hours in the colony's overwhelmed medical bay, and the exhaustion was a physical weight on her shoulders. "Transmitting departure codes," Bin muttered, his hands moving over the controls. "Hellion Command has granted us a narrow vector to their flagship." Jay simply nodded. He was a diplomat, a negotiator. His tools were words, reason, prescient. The data slate on the seat next to him felt heavier than a warship. It contained the terms of the ceasefire, a document of surrender in everything but name. The Hellion Dominion had struck New Daegu without warning, a brutal show of force to settle a disputed border claim. The colony's limited defenses had been swept aside. The human fleet, stretched thin across peaceful frontiers, had arrived too late. The message from High Command had been clear: secure a ceasefire. Prevent further loss of life. Buy time. The shuttle shuddered as it broke orbit, leaving the angry red wound of New Daegu behind. Ahead, hanging in the star-flecked black, was the Hellion flagship. It was a brutal piece of engineering, all sharp angles and weapon nodules. The name, translated from the Hellion glyphs, was World Claimant. Jay committed the shape of it to memory. The docking procedure was automated, harsh magnetic clamps seizing the shuttle with a jarring thud. The air that hissed into the cabin as the hatch opened was cold, dry, and smelled of strange metals and an almost spicy alien scent. 2 Hellion warriors awaited them. They were tall, their bodies protected by a natural, chitinous armor over which they wore segmented plating. Their faces were rigid, with multifaceted eyes that reflected the corridor lights. No words were exchanged. They were escorted through stark, gray corridors. The ship hummed with a deep, powerful vibration, the sound of immense engines. They passed other Hellion, who looked at the humans with blank, dismissive stares. There was no hatred there, which was somehow worse. It was the look one gave an inconvenient insect. They were not taken to a meeting room or a diplomatic suite. Instead, they were ushered into a large, circular chamber. One entire wall was a transparent alloy, a viewing bay overlooking the planet below. New Daeju's primary continent was still visible, the smear of the attack site glowing faintly. Standing before the view was Commander Vextal. He was larger than the others, his chitin dark and etched with fine lines that denoted rank or achievements. He did not turn as they entered. "You may approach." A translated voice boomed from a hidden speaker, toneless and mechanical. J walked forward, Myray a step behind. He stopped at a respectful distance, the data slate in his hand. He waited. After a long moment, Vextal turned. His faceted eyes swept over them, lingering for a second on Murray's medical kit, then on Jay's simple diplomatic tunic. "The gardeners of New Daegu sent their best talker and a healer," a translated voice said. "A fitting delegation for a species that tends flowers." Jay kept his face neutral. "Commander Vextal, I am Jay, empowered by the Human Colonial Administration to formalize the ceasefire. This is Dr. Myray. We have the agreed terms here." He offered the data slate. Vextal ignored it. One of his clawed hands gestured vaguely toward the planet. Your colony was in a zone of Hellion expansion. You were notified. The notification was received simultaneous with your first orbital strike, Jay said, his voice carefully flat. There was no time for evacuation, no chance for discussion. Discussion? Vextal made a short, sharp sound, the Hellion equivalent of a scoff. You speak as if you had a choice. You cultivate gardens and build philosophies. You do not wage war. This... He gestured again at the smoke below. Inconvenience proves it. Your ships are slow. Your weapons are weak. You have no stomach for the realities of the galaxy. Murray's jaw tightened. She thought of the triage center, of the children with radiation burns, of the old man she couldn't save because their med scanners had been fried by the electromagnetic pulses. She said nothing. Jay took a slow breath. The ceasefire terms include the immediate withdrawal of Hellion forces from the new Dagu system and the provision of humanitarian aid to the survivors. Vextal finally moved. Turning fully to face Jay, he loomed over him. The Dominion does not withdraw. We consolidate. New Dagu is a lesson. The three systems bordering this sector, your designations Epsilon 7, Theta 12, and Lyra Junction, will become Dominion protectorates. Buffer zones. This is not a term for discussion. It is a fact you will relay to your leaders. Jay felt a cold knot form in his stomach. Those systems held over 20 million people. That is a massive displacement of civilians. It is a direct violation of the Galactic Concord. The Concord is for species that can enforce it, Vextal stated. He looked at Myray. Your people should not have been in our way. Their discomfort is their own doing. Something in Myray snapped. The professional calm cracked. Their discomfort? Her voice was low but quivered with fury. Those are worlds. People have built lives there for generations. You're talking about making millions refugees to satisfy your expansion schedule. Vextal's head tilted. He seemed almost amused by her outburst. Emotion. A predictable weakness. Your species is soft, from the core out. You lack the necessary hardness for survival. It is why you will always be tending the gardens of greater powers. The insult hung in the cold air. It wasn't just political. It was biological, evolutionary. A dismissal of their very right to exist as equals. Jay had listened. He had absorbed the fear, the loss, the ash of New Daegu. He had held the data slate of surrender. He had swallowed every diplomatic protocol. Now, looking at the smug, unfeeling face of the creature who had ordered the deaths of thousands and saw millions more as dust to be brushed aside, something in Jay settled. It was not a heating, but a freezing. A vast, quiet lake of resolve turning to ice. He carefully placed the data slate on a nearby console. The gesture was final. He looked at Vextal, and his eyes were no longer those of a supplicant diplomat. They were dark, empty, and utterly still. You have made an error. Commander, Jay said, his voice so quiet Myray barely heard it. Yet it cut through the room's hum. Vextal's faceted eyes fixed on him. Oh? You have mistaken our restraint for weakness. You have confused our choice for incapability. Jay took one step closer, ignoring the towering alien's imposing size. You look at our gardens and see only softness. You do not see the roots that break stone, or the patience that turns barren rock into soil. You wanted our colony. You took it. You want our frontier worlds. You think you can just take them? Jay's lips were a thin line. He delivered the next words not as a threat, but as a simple, terrifying statement of fact, each syllable dropping like a stone into a deep well. You want war? Then watch your worlds blaze. Silence, Vextal stared. Then the scoffing sound came again, louder, harsher. Brave words from a gardener, holding no tools. Get them off my ship. Their ceasefire is approved, pending the transfer of the 3 systems. They have one of their cycles to comply. The guards moved forward. Jay did not resist. He turned, his movements precise. He didn't look at Vextal again. Myrae followed, her heart hammering against her ribs. She had seen Jay's face in that final moment. The kindly, patient diplomat was gone. What looked out from his eyes was something ancient, cold, and utterly ruthless. It scared her more than the Hellion. Back on the shuttle, as the clamps released and they drifted away from the monstrous world claimant, Bin let out a shaky breath. What now, sir? Jay was looking at his own reflection in the viewport, backlit by the stars. The ice was still there in his eyes. He reached for a small, secure console built into the shuttle's wall. It was not for standard communications. He input a complex 24-digit code, then a retinal scan. A single blank field appeared on the screen. He typed one word. He hit transmit. The signal was tight, focused, aimed at no known human outpost or fleet. It vanished into the dark, a whisper igniting a fuse. Jay leaned back, watching the Hellion flagship shrink against the stars. He had promised them a blaze. Now he had to light the fire. Deep in the Ghost Reef Nebula, where sensor beams frayed into static and stars were faint smudges behind curtains of colorful dust, there was a specific point of absolute darkness. It was not natural. It drank all light, all energy signatures, eating back nothing. It was a cloak, the most advanced humanity had ever built, woven from the principles of bent space and borrowed time. Inside the cloak was not a warship. It was a city. A moving, skeletal city of gantries, shipyards, reactor hubs, and habitats. It had no name in any official fleet register. Its personnel were ghosts, wiped from public records years ago. Its funding was a black hole in the colonial budget. It was Project Prometheus, and Jay's signal was the spark it had been built to awake. In the Central Command habitat. Admiral Sujin watched the word Prometheus flash on her secure screen. It was the only trigger she would ever accept from a field asset. No other code, no plea for help, just this. Her face, etched with lines of command and long vigilance, showed no surprise. Only a grim, deep satisfaction. She turned to her second, a quiet man named Day. He's alive, and he's called it Wake the Project. Full combat awakening, now. Across the vast station, lights that had been dim for years flared to life. Reactors hummed, their power diverted from life support to monstrous fabrication bays. In the main hangar, crews in gray jumpsuits scrambled to vehicles that looked nothing like warships. They were blocky, utilitarian, designed for asteroid mining, deep space construction, and long-haul cargo. In a lab module suspended over a canyon-like engineering bay, Taiyang was already awake. He was Marae's older brother, but where she was all focused energy, he was a pool of calm intensity. He'd been running simulations for this moment for 5 years. His screen showed a complex star map, focused on a yellow star designated Hellion Prime. His comm buzzed. It was Sujin. The asset is inbound with a civilian medic. The trigger is valid. What's our opening statement? Taiyang zoomed in on the star. They believe strength is shown by destroying a world. We will show them a greater strength. The strength to control it. His fingers danced, pulling up schematics of a device that looked like a misshapen communications satellite. We send them a lullaby. While Prometheus stirred, the Hellion Dominion moved with arrogant certainty. Commander Vextal's report to the High Command was a masterpiece of contempt. The humans were broken. Their diplomat had made empty threats before scurrying away. The three new protectorate systems were being occupied with minimal force. Hellion troops patrolled clean, orderly human streets, their presence a constant, looming reminder of the new order. There was some sullenness, some protests, but no armed resistance. It fit the Hellion view of humanity perfectly. They were docile. They would adapt, or they would be removed. The human shuttle, bearing Jay, Myray, and pilot Bin, did not return to any colony or fleet base. Its navigation system, following encrypted orders from the Prometheus signal, took them on a long, erratic jump, far from any trade lane. Bin watched the navigational readouts with confusion. "Sir, these coordinates are nowhere. It's a nebula, a navigational hazard." "Follow them," Jay said. He hadn't slept. He sat perfectly still, his mind a locked vault. My RAE finally broke the silence. "What you said to him? Watch your worlds blaze. What did you mean, Jay? Who were you talking to?" Jay looked at her. The ice had thawed a little, replaced by a profound weariness. "I was talking to the only thing of power like the Dominion understands. Not reason, not law. A bigger stick." "We don't have a bigger stick," Bin said, despair in his voice. Our fleet," Jay interrupted softly, "is what they expect us to have. Prometheus is what they don't." The shuttle shuddered as it entered the nebula's outer dust clouds. Sensors fizzed with static. Then, without warning, the stars ahead vanished. A wall of pure blackness filled the viewport. Bin gasped, yanking at the controls, but there was no impact. They passed through a shimmer like a heat haze, and the universe changed. The skeletal city filled their view. Gantries as large as skyscrapers moved in silence. Ships that looked like tugs and freighters glided between them, but their engine signatures were wrong, too powerful, too clean. The scale was immense, dwarfing even the Hellion flagship. "Mother of us all," Bin whispered. A calm voice came over their comm. "Shuttle GH7, welcome to the Forge. Proceed to docking Vector Alpha." And Jay, "It's good to see the signal." It was Sujin's voice. Jay allowed himself a small, exhausted breath. They docked. The bay they entered was pressurized and bustling, but eerily quiet. People moved with purpose, speaking in low tones. They wore plain gray, with no insignia. Admiral Sujin met them at the ramp. She was a tall woman with steel-gray hair cut short, and she assessed Myray and Bin with a single, sweeping glance before focusing on Jay. "They took the three systems," Jay said. "No greeting needed. We saw. Vextal believes we are gardeners with loud voices. He believes his victory is total." Sujin smiled. It was not a warm expression. "Good. Let him believe it a little longer." She turned, leading them into a command center. Screens showed the occupied systems, Hellion troop movements, and a detailed schematic of Hellion Prime's solar system. Tai Yang was there. He embraced Myray tightly, a moment of pure relief, before his professional mask slid back on. "You gave him the warning. Now we deliver the message." On the main screen, he called up his device. The Hellion homeworld has a population of 12 billion. Orbital infrastructure is immense. Shipyards, power stations, defense platforms, communications arrays, all hardened against kinetic and energy weapons. Standard doctrine says to neutralize it, you need a fleet battle and planetary bombardment. He changed the display to show their device, now mounted on a small, stealthy probe. "We are not following standard doctrine. This is a modified FTL communication array. It doesn't send a message. It sends a very specific resonant harmonic pulse into the photosphere of a star." Myray, the scientist in her overriding her shock, leaned forward. "A stellar harmonic? You can induce a flare?" "A targeted, amplified coronal mass ejection," Tai Yang corrected. a solar burp aimed directly at their world. The radiation and electromagnetic pulse will be intense, but the atmosphere will shield the population. Mostly, it will give everyone a nasty sunburn and a global aurora. But every unshielded circuit on the day side and in orbit will be fried. Every satellite, every power grid, every unhardened computer. It will be a blackout, not of a city, but of a world. Jay understood immediately. You're not destroying their world. You're turning off their lights. From 93 million miles away, Sujin said, we show them we can reach out and touch their home with precision from the darkness. We show them we could choose to burn it, and we choose not to. The message is not, we can destroy you. The message is, we are deciding not to. Today, the plan was terrifying in its elegance. It was not an act of war, as the Hellion knew it. It was a demonstration of a power they could not comprehend. Do it, Jay said. The probe, nicknamed Whisper, slipped out of the Prometheus cloak and vanished into a pre-planned jump. It traveled not to Hellion space, but to a calculated empty point, a gravitational sweet spot where its pulse would be perfectly focused. It unfolded like a strange flower, and for a single silent minute, it fired its encoded lullaby into the void-dotted Hellion Prime. It was midday. The sky was clear. On the world claimant, orbiting high above, Vextal was reviewing garrison reports from the newly occupied human systems. It was mundane, boring. Proof of his victory. An alarm shrilled, low and urgent. A junior officer called out, voice type, Commander, anomalous energy spike from the sun. Off the scale. Vextal strode to the viewport. Their star, a placid yellow, seemed to shudder. A vast, darker patch bloomed on its surface, and then a plume of fire, 100 times the size of their world, erupted in a graceful, horrific arc. It was not aimed randomly into space. It was aimed, like a spear, directly at Hellion Prime. Panic erupted on the bridge. Shields were raised, ships scrambled to reposition. But the plume was not solid matter. It was a storm of radiation and charged particles, moving at the speed of light. It hit. The orbital shipyards went dark first, their lights winking out. Then the communications satellites failed in a wave. On the planet's dayside, city lights vanished. The global data net collapsed. On the world claimant, systems screamed as EMP washed over them. Backups kicked in, but the main sensors were blinded. For 12 minutes, Hellion Prime was blind, deaf, and mute, bathed in a terrifying, beautiful light show of auroras that crackled across every sky. When the emergency systems finally restored a grainy visual, Vextal stared at his homeworld, now studded with the dead lights of its civilization. No cities were burned. No mountains were shattered. But the silence from the planet was absolute. The message was clear, cold, and unmistakable. Somewhere in the dark, the humans had just proved they were not gardeners. They were shepherds of a power that could leash stars. And they had chosen, for now, only to whisper a warning. Panic, cold and efficient, spread through the Hellion Dominion. The stellar flare had not killed a single citizen, but it had killed their certainty. Their homeworld was not a distant, untouchable fortress. It was a target that had been effortlessly tagged from the dark. The High Command's messages to Commander Vextal were no longer reports. They were demands for explanation, edged with a fear they couldn't quite hide. Vextal's pride curdled into a hard, sharp fury. He stood on the bridge of the world claimant, now orbiting a silent and shamed Hellion Prime. This is not a military action, he snarled at his officers. It is a trick, a coward's manipulation of energy. They have no fleet, no army. They hide and play with tools. His chitinous fists clenched. We will find this hiding place, and we will crush it. Bring me the human. He meant Jay, the one who had promised the blaze, the one who had spoken this nightmare into existence. But finding Prometheus was like trying to grab smoke. The Hellion fleet, a massive and terrifying hammer, began a systematic search of the sectors near the human border. They scanned nebulas, probed asteroid fields, and challenged every civilian human freighter they found. They found nothing but fear, confusion, and empty space. Their strategy was built for an enemy that would mass and fight. Prometheus was not that enemy. Deep in the Ghost Reef, the humans were not hiding. They were working in the main fabrication bay of Prometheus. Jay and Myray watched as a swarm of small beetle-like drones skittered over the hull of a Hellion light transport. The ship had been captured weeks before, its crew quietly taken, its transponder now broadcasting false signals. The drones weren't carrying welding torches or guns. They carried nano-disassemblers, a technology designed for precision asteroid mining. We need raw materials, Tai Yang explained, his eyes on a data stream. They're stripping the ship, not for parts, but for base elements. Iron, carbon, silicon. The Prometheus forges can reprocess it into anything we need faster than any Hellion shipyard. We are not building from a supply line. We are building from their trash. On a screen, they watched as the transport's hull simply dissolved in a wave of shimmering gray dust, collected by the drones and ferried away in streams. It was eerily quiet. Within hours, the ship was gone, leaving only a faint metallic residue. It had been unmade. Admiral Sujin joined them, her arms crossed. Their fleet is searching in a grid pattern. Predictable. They expect us to be a nest they can burn out. We will not be a nest. We will be a virus. The first symptom of the virus appeared in the Hellion-occupied system of Theta 12. The main garrison was on the moon Serenity, a barren rock with a valuable deuterium mining operation. 1,000 Hellion troops oversaw 10,000 human workers. One morning, the soldiers began to collapse. It was not violent. They didn't choke or bleed. They simply became impossibly dizzy. They stumbled, their balance failing completely, their multifaceted eyes unable to focus. They retched, unable to stand. The human workers watched, confused, as their imposing guards clutched their heads and moaned on the ground. In the Prometheus med bay, Myray watched the live feed from hidden sensors. Her face was a mask of professional focus, but her stomach was tight. The vertigo agent is working, non-lethal. It mimics a disruption in their inner ear, fluid based on their unique biology. It's derived from our inner ear infection treatments. How long? Sujin asked. 12 to 18 hours of total incapacitation. They'll recover fully. Murray's voice was firm, but she added quieter, it feels strange. Using medicine as a weapon. It is a weapon of control, not destruction, Jay said from behind her. He had been listening. They are alive, unharmed, but neutralized. It proves we are not monsters. It proves we are precise. While the garrison was helpless, unmarked human shuttles, piloted by Prometheus crews, descended. They didn't attack. They entered the main supply depot and began loading the Hellion food stockpiles, their spare parts, their fuel cells. They took everything. The human workers, after a moment of shock, began to help. They knew these were their people. When the shuttles left, the Hellion troops were still groaning on the ground, and their larder was empty. News of the silent sickness and the looted depot reached Vextal. He smashed a console. Poison. They use cowards' poison. Find the source. But there was no source. The agent had been delivered by a modified atmospheric processor, a common piece of terraforming equipment left near the water reclamation plant weeks earlier. It had activated on a timer and then self-destructed into harmless base chemicals. The second symptom was more violent. A Hellion battle group, 3 heavy destroyers, picked up a faint energy signature in a dense asteroid field at the edge of the Lyra Junction system. It was a tiny, fleeting blip, likely a human hideout. Eager for a real fight, they plunged in, their powerful shields deflecting the smaller rocks. They took the bait, Taiyang said on the Prometheus command deck. He tapped a control. On the Hellion bridge, the commander saw it too late. A network of devices, which looked like standard gravity projectors used for managing large cargo containers, flared to life across the asteroid field. They didn't create a single gravity well. They created a chaotic, shifting pattern. A weave. Suddenly, the predictable paths of the asteroids were gone. The field became a mad, swirling blender. A mountain-sized rock, yanked by 3 conflicting gravity pulls, sheared in half. One half slammed into the lead destroyer's shields, which flared white and failed. The other half spun and crushed its engine nacelle. The other 2 destroyers tried to flee, but were caught in the tidal forces, their hulls groaning as they were dragged into collisions with smaller, faster-moving debris that it was over in minutes. The gravity projectors shut down. The asteroid field settled back into its natural, slow dance, now littered with the crumpled, silent wrecks of Hellion warships. No human ship had ever fired a shot. Back on Prometheus, the mood was grimly satisfied. They were scoring victories, but the cost of a mistake was annihilation. Jay spent his time studying Hellion psychology, looking for the crack in their unity. He found it in their supply lines. The Hellion war machine was vast, but it was built for short, crushing campaigns. It required constant replenishment. With the depot at Theta 12 looted, and their patrols now fearful of every asteroid and every strange signal, the flow of supplies to their forward fleets was becoming thin and nervous. "They are predators," Jay said to Sujin. "Used to the herd fleeing. We are not fleeing. We are cutting the grass from under their feet. Their confidence is their fuel. We are draining it." Vextal, increasingly isolated and blamed for the disasters, made a fateful decision. He would not wait for the fleet to find the human lair. He would lure the human out. Using a captured human civilian freighter, he broadcast a distress call on an old human emergency channel. It was a crude trap, but his patience was gone. The Prometheus listening posts heard it. They also detected the 3 Hellion cruisers hiding in the dust cloud nearby, waiting. "It's obvious," they said. "But it is a message," Jay replied. "He is challenging me directly. He wants the gardener to come out and fight." Sujin considered. "We cannot risk an asset." "We send a different message," Jay said. "We answer the call, but not with a warship." A single small vessel slipped out of the cloak. It was not armed. It was a fast courier ship, the kind used for diplomatic packets. It piloted by a remote link from Prometheus. It approached the distressed freighter dot the moment it did. The 3 Hellion cruisers powered up and surged forward, weapons hot. They surrounded the tiny courier ship. On the bridge of the lead cruiser, Vextal's image appeared on the courier's view screen. His faceted eyes glinted with triumph. Finally, the gardener steps from his shed. "Where is your master, little ship? Where is Jay?" On the Prometheus command deck, Jay nodded. His own face appeared on the screen, replacing the ship's identifier. He looked calm. He looked directly at Vextal. "Hello, Commander. I see you are still looking for a fleet to fight. You will not find one." Vextal's triumph wavered. "You hide behind machines and tricks. You are no warrior." "You fight to conquer, Commander," Jay said, his voice even. "We fight to unmake. Your depot is gone. Your soldiers are sick. Your ships are scrap in an asteroid field. Your supply lines are crumbling. You are not fighting an army. You are fighting an idea. And you are losing." He leaned slightly forward, his gaze unwavering. Your strength is in what you can break. Ours is in what we can build, and what we choose to take apart. This is not war as you know it. This is deconstruction. Before Vextol could roar a response, the small courier ship's reactor went into a controlled overload. It didn't explode. It released a massive burst of electromagnetic static, blinding the Hellion sensors for a crucial minute. When it cleared, the courier was gone, vanished into a pre-planned micro-jump, leaving Vextau alone with his rage and the chilling, unanswered silence. Chaos, quiet and cold, infected the Hellion Dominion. The High Command was split. One faction, led by elder strategists who had seen the silent sickness and the vanished ships, argued for negotiation. They do not fight. One counselor insisted over the flickering comes to Vextau. They unmake, as their diplomat said. We are losing not battles, but the capacity to wage war. We must speak with them. The other faction, smaller but louder, screamed of dishonor. They demanded Vextau find and burn the human nest, no matter the cost. Vextau listened to the arguing voices in his command chamber, the hum of the world claimant feeling like a mockery. His pride, once the core of his being, was now a festering wound. He had been humiliated by gardeners. His victories had been turned to dust by tools and tricks. The human, Jai, had looked into his eyes through a screen and spoken of deconstruction. That word echoed in his mind, more terrifying than any threat of annihilation. He made his decision. He would not negotiate with tools. He would not be deconstructed. He would remind the galaxy what true power was. He cut the comms to the High Command, then issued orders to his most loyal captains. They would seize the World Ender. The World Ender was not just a ship. It was a doctrine, a planet killer. It was kept in a quarantined system, a weapon of such horror that even the Hellion had treaties forbidding its use. Its main weapon could crack a continent. Vextau no longer cared for treaties. The humans had broken the rules of war. He would break the final one. The coup was swift and brutal. The skeleton crew guarding the World Ender was loyal to the High Command. Vextal's shock troops overwhelmed them. Within hours, the monstrous ship, shaped like a barbed spearhead, slid out of its dock. Its shadow falling across a loyalist patrol ship, it promptly vaporized. Vextal transferred his flag to it. The world claimant was a tool of conquest. The World Ender was a tool of erasure. His message was broadcast on all frequencies, aimed at human space and the listening Prometheus. Human called J. You hide in the dark and strike at the edges. You speak of deconstruction. I speak a simpler language. On the screen, Vextal stood before the massive weapons control console. You have one solar cycle. Surrender the location of your hidden base and submit to Dominion authority. If you do not, I will use this ship's primary weapon on the colony of New Daegu. I will not blacken its skies. I will shatter its crust and boil its oceans. The scar will be visible from space for 1,000,000 years. Your choice. Your world burns, or you emerge to face a warrior's end. On Prometheus, the command deck was silent. The sensor image of the World Ender hung in the air, its power signature a sickening ripple across their screens. They had calculated for many things, but not for this level of insane escalation. Myrae felt her blood turn to ice. New Daegu, the place of ash and loss. They were going to salt the earth. Tai Yang's face was pale. We have no weapon that can punch through its shields in time. It's a fortress. By the time we could whittle it down, New Daegu would be gone, Sujin finished, her voice granite. She turned to Jay. He has called your bluff. He thinks the stellar flare was our strongest card. Jay was looking at the image of the World Ender, at Vextal's triumphant, rage-mad face. He did not see a warrior. He saw a cornered animal, lashing out with the only thing it understood: total destruction. The cold lake inside him, the one that had frozen on the Hellion flagship, did not crack. It deepened. "He is wrong," Jay said, very quietly. "The lullaby was not our strongest card. It was our politest one." He looked at Tai Yang. "You said you could make a star flare. Could you make it do more? Could you, for a single moment, make it sneeze?" Tai Yang stared. The scientific challenge cut through his fear. A forced micronova. The energy required. The focusing array would need to be an order of magnitude more powerful. And the probe would be vaporized. It's a one-shot weapon. Literally. "It's not a weapon for the star," Jay said, his eyes shifting to the screen showing Hellion Prime, its orbital infrastructure still dark and broken. "It is a message for the one holding the gun to New Dagu's head. He wants to see a world blaze. We show him his own." Sujin understood immediately. It was a gamble of terrifying scale. We would be revealing we have that capability. There would be no hiding it. "There is no hiding now," Jay said. "He has made it a contest of horrors. We must show him we possess a greater one, and the restraint to wield it. Authorize it." Sujin looked at the faces of her crew. She saw fear, but beneath it, a hardened resolve. They had not come this far to watch a world die. She nodded. "Do it. Operation Phoenix. Burn the message into their sky." Prometheus became a hive of silent, frantic activity. The fabrication bays, already fed by the unmade Hellion ships, worked at a pace that made the air shimmer with heat. They were building a new probe, twice the size of Whisper. They called it Ember. Its core was not a harmonic resonator, but a stolen, miniaturized Hellion hypercore, wrapped in human-designed containment fields. It was not a scalpel. It was a bomb designed to tickle a star in exactly the wrong way. The World Ender began its slow, ominous journey toward the new Daegu system. The human colonies along its path evacuated in terror, but the ship did not fire. It was a funeral procession. Vextol wanted an audience. He wanted Jay to watch. Jay did watch. On Prometheus, they all watched. The tension was a physical thing, a weight on the chest. Ember was launched. Its jump was shorter, more violent. It appeared not in empty space, but dangerously close to the corona of Hellion Prime's sun. It began its activation sequence, a 60-second countdown during which it was utterly defenseless. "Time?" Sujin asked, her voice a dry whisper. "Ember reaches 0 in 40 seconds. The World Ender enters optimal firing range for New Dagu in 55. Day reported. It was a race decided by heartbeats. On the bridge of the World Ender, Vextol watched the blue-green marble of New Dagu grow in his viewport. A part of him, buried deep, wondered if the human would call, if he would beg. He hoped he would. The weapon officer's voice came. "Optimal range in 10, Commander. Powering primary." Vextol took a final, satisfied breath. "Target the primary continent." Let it, an alarm, different from all others, a deep, pulsating shriek of stellar radiation warnings, drowned him out. "Commander, the sun, it's..." On every screen, the image of Hellion Prime's sun warped. It didn't just flare. A fraction of its surface, a patch larger than 100 worlds, seemed to ignite. A beam of pure, white stellar fury, hotter and more focused than anything natural, lanced out. It was not aimed at the planet. It was aimed with impossible precision at the World Ender's sister ship, the Iron Will, which was holding position in high orbit as a guard. The beam struck. The Iron Will, a mighty battleship in its own right, did not explode. It vaporized. One moment it was there, a symbol of Hellion power. The next, there was an expanding cloud of incandescent gas, and then nothing. The beam lasted for less than a second before the star's own forces snuffed it out, leaving a temporary dark scar on the solar surface. The silence on the World Ender's bridge was absolute. The weapon officer's hand hovered over the firing control. Vextel stared at the empty space where the iron will had been. He understood. The humans had not missed. They had chosen the target. They could have chosen the World Ender. They could have chosen Hellion Prime. They had chosen to destroy a single ship from 93 million miles away with a star. A communication request chimed. It was the same tight beam frequency Jay had used before. Vextal, moving like a machine, accepted it. Jay's face appeared. He looked tired. There was no anger, no gloating, only a profound, weary certainty. "You wanted to see a world blaze, Commander," Jay said, his voice calm. "You were looking at the wrong one. Look at yours." On a secondary screen, the image of Hellion Prime filled the view. The scar on its sun was fading, a temporary wound. The message was not in the destruction of one ship. It was in the impossible, godlike precision of the shot. "The iron will is gone because you needed an object lesson," Jay continued. "Your gun is still pointed at New Daegu. My gun is pointed at the heart of your civilization. And mine is bigger. Lower your weapon. Stand down." Vextal remained standing, but something inside him, the last supporting pillar of his will, crumbled into dust. He had promised a blaze. The humans had shown him they could make a sun itself into a torch and light it with a match. He was not a warrior facing an enemy. He was an ant that had kicked a mountain, and the mountain had just sighed. His hand fell to his side. He could not give the order. He looked at the horrified faces of his crew, who had just seen a star used as a sniper rifle. "Commander?" the weapon officer asked, his voice trembling. Vextal did not speak. He just slowly shook his head. The standoff in the new Daegu system did not end with a bang, but with a slow, silent exhale. On the bridge of the World Ender, Commander Vextal stood frozen, his clawed hand still hovering near the firing console. The image of the vaporized iron will was burned into the eyes of every Hellion on the ship. They had seen their sun used as a weapon. The concept of war, as they knew it, had just been rewritten. The weapon officer, a young Hellion named Crox, looked from his commander to the blue planet on the screen. His fingers were poised over the controls. The order to fire would take only a moment. But the unspoken question hung in the air, thick and cold. What would the human star do next? Vingstal's voice, when it finally came, was not the roar of a commander. It was a hollow, broken thing. The human. He said to stand down. A senior officer, his chitin marked with old battle scars, stepped forward. "Commander, the High Command. They did not authorize this. The World Ender. Its use is forbidden. This is madness." The officer's voice held not just disobedience, but a dawning horror at the abyss Vextal had led them to. Vextal turned his head, his multifaceted eyes dull. "You question me?" "I question the destruction of our honor." The officer shot back. Others on the bridge were nodding, their loyalty to the Dominion cracking under the weight of stellar fire. "You would make us the species that murdered a world over pride? After they showed such restraint? No, I will not be part of this." A hum filled the bridge as the officer bypassed the command lockout, his own code still active from before the coup. The primary weapon's power indicator began to drop, the terrifying energy bleeding away into capacitors. The World Ender was disarming itself. Vextal did not move to stop him. He simply watched as the symbol of ultimate power on his ship winked out. He was empty. The human, Jay, had not just beaten him. He had made his entire understanding of strength seem childish, brutal, and small. An hour later, a single, An armed human shuttle emerged from a micro-jump point near the world ender. It carried no weapons, only a small delegation. Admiral Sujin had argued to go, but Jay had insisted. I made him the promise. I must be the one to see it through. He went with my Ray and 2 quiet, alert Prometheus security officers. They docked with the silent Leviathan. The Hellion who met them in the boarding tube were not guards, but a group of officers, their weapons holstered. The senior officer from the bridge led them. Commander Vextal is in the command chamber. He will not resist. The walk through the world ender was eerie. Hellion crew watched them pass, their expressions unreadable, but their postures defeated. They did not see conquerors. They saw the men and women who had tamed a star. Vextal was where they had left him, standing before the great viewport, his back to them, looking at New Daegu. Commander, Jay said. Vextal did not turn. You came to see your victory. I came to end the war, Jay corrected. He stepped forward, my Ray beside him. You look at our gardens and see only softness. You never saw the roots that break stone to find water. You never saw the patience that can turn a wasteland into a forest. We turned those roots and that patience against you. Finally, Vextal turned. He seemed smaller now, the arrogance gone, leaving only a shell. You used tricks, tools. We used our minds, my Ray said, her voice clear. You have claws and guns. We have medicine that can heal or sicken. We have gravity that can build or destroy. We have communication that can send a message or ignite a star. You define strength by what you can destroy. We define it by what we can build, and what we choose not to destroy. Jay nodded. You aimed a planet killer at a colony of survivors. We aimed a star at a single ship to make a point. We could have chosen your world. We did not. That is the difference between us. Vextal had no answer. The truth was a cold stone in his gut. The peace that followed was not a joyful celebration. It was a somber, meticulous process. The real Hellion High Command, having retaken control from Vextal's mutinous faction, was desperate to negotiate. They had seen the footage. They understood now that humanity's pacifism was not a biological weakness, but a terrifyingly disciplined choice. The treaty was signed not on a Hellion flagship, but on a neutral space station. Admiral Sujin and Jay represented humanity. The terms were stark: full reparations for New Daegu and the other damaged colonies. The immediate and complete withdrawal from all occupied human systems. The dismantling of the world ender and all other planet-killer weapons under joint supervision. And a permanent, demilitarized buffer zone, monitored by human sensor drones that looked suspiciously like the Whisper probes. The Hellion agreed to every term. They had no other choice. They had learned the price of human anger. Back on a slowly healing New Daegu, Jay and my Ray stood on a hillside overlooking the rebuilding capital. The scars were still their charred ground. Skeletal buildings, but prefab housing units were going up, and the first green shoots of genetically accelerated crops were pushing through the ash. Do you think they'll remember? My Ray asked, watching a transport shuttle glide silently toward the new spaceport. Jay followed her gaze. The Hellion? Yes, they will remember the day their son fought for us. They will tell stories about the humans who weaponized gravity and sickness in starlight. He picked up a handful of soil, black and rich. The galaxy will remember us now. Not as gardeners, not as victims, but as the ones who showed that true strength isn't in how much you can take, but in how much you can spare. He let the soil sift through his fingers. Our restraint is our weapon, my Ray. And now, everyone knows it's loaded. In the official archives of the Hellion Dominion, the conflict was given a name, a title drawn from their own military logs recording the human diplomat's final words on the world claimant. It was not listed as a glorious campaign or a noble struggle. It was classified as a catastrophic strategic miscalculation, a warning to all future generations. They called it the Blaze War. And in every analysis, every history, every whispered caution told to young Hellion warriors, the lesson was the same: beware the humans. Beware the day you push them from the garden path. For when a human finally looks at you and says, "You want war?" you must pray you never have to see what comes next. You must pray you never have to watch your worlds blaze.